The story begins with a girl who rushes home to play her favorite video game when suddenly Recap-kun appears and she gets run over. She finds herself in the body of a princess, immediately collapsing on the floor as the servants panic, scrambling to find help, and we learn she has been reincarnated into the game as the evil Princess Pride, who serves as the final boss. Her character's role is to cause the downfall of the country in 10 years' time, committing atrocities until the protagonist puts an end to her reign of terror. As she lies on her bed, her father, the prince consort Albert, enters the room, checking up on her, telling her that her mother is worried about her. Her mother is named Rosa, and she serves as the most powerful leader in her country. Pride hardly ever meets her because she is occupied with her duties as the queen, but she knows that there is another reason. She asks Albert about her younger sister, knowing her sister is the protagonist named Tiara. He wonders how she found out about this, and he suspects that she has the power of precognition, which is the same power that Rosa has. Because of this, he starts seeing her as the genuine crown princess, but Pride knows that this is not how the scene is supposed to go. Albert tells her to get some rest as he leaves the room, and Pride remembers that the people in the kingdom can be born with special abilities. The power of precognition is one of the most valuable abilities, and it is fit for a monarch, so those who possess that ability are chosen to succeed the throne. Even in the game, her character displays that ability by correctly guessing that she has a sister, making her a worthy successor to the throne. However, Pride knows that her situation is different, because she knows that, as the game's final boss, she is going to get convicted and die in the end. She knows there is a bad ending where either Tiara or her love interest dies, but she doesn't want to force this ending, because she knows that Tiara and her love interest are good people, while her character is pure evil. At that moment, she remembers something, and she quickly gets off her bed, asking the maids about her father. The maids tell her that he left to report to the queen, and she opens the window, calling out to Albert as she hops on the window ledge. The maids try to stop her, but she tells them not to interfere. Pride tells Albert not to ride the carriage, saying it has a broken wheel which will cause an accident, and there is suddenly a strong gust of wind, which causes her to fall, but a servant grabs onto her, saving her in the nick of time. The maids immediately bow their heads as they beg for forgiveness, and this makes Pride remember that her character punished the maids, and even gave them the death penalty. This causes her to cry, as she apologizes to the maids, causing them to be shocked. Albert enters the room, asking her if the servants did something to her, but she says she's the one at fault, telling him not to punish the servants. Later that day, Albert tells her that she will meet Tiara on her 6th birthday, and he needs to adopt a younger brother to act as an assistant. The next day, as she walks around the castle, the servants talk about how she has changed as a person, as she thinks about denying everything because she is nothing like the Pride in the game. She thinks about how both of her parents are still alive, because in the game, they are supposed to be dead at that point in the story, so she thinks she can change the story in that world. Albert introduces her to her younger brother-in-law named Stale, who is one of the love interests in the game, saying he will act as her assistant. Stale has a teleportation ability, and he's wearing handcuffs to suppress this, because he tried to run away multiple times. Albert tells her that Stale will enter a contract of subordination with her tomorrow, so that the handcuffs will no longer be necessary. Pride remembers how her character tricked Stale into signing a contract of fealty instead of a contract of subordination, and this gave her absolute control over Stale, making him her slave. This makes her worry that they are just following the storyline, thinking she can't change the story. That evening, she goes to Stale's room, asking him if he wants to see his mother. Stale becomes emotional, as Pride shows him the key to his handcuffs, which she secretly took from Albert's desk. Pride is about to remove his handcuffs, but Stale tells her that he and his mother would receive punishment if he escapes from the castle. Stale explains that after the official notice, he only had 2 weeks to stay with his mother before he was sent to the castle, and he was crying on the day they parted, but he was able to give her a proper goodbye. He is afraid that another kid would replace him if he escapes, saying he doesn't want anyone to suffer the same fate as him, so he'll just forget about his mother and serve her. Pride thinks that Stale is a good boy, and she remembers how her character manipulated him into killing his own mother, so she becomes emotional, telling him to sleep well as she walks away. The following day, they sign the contract, and Stale's handcuffs are removed, as Albert welcomes him to the family. Stale tells Pride that he is looking forward to being at her side, saying he will protect her as he addresses her as the princess. Pride tells him not to be so formal since they are family now, but her father's assistant, Chancellor Gilbert, goes to them, advising Stale to address her formally in front of others, as he tells Pride that she has become a fine vessel for a queen, knowing about her precognition ability. Pride takes Stale around the house, showing him the library, and she tells him to use it whenever he wishes. She later sees him holding onto some books, but he suddenly falls to the ground as he starts breathing heavily. Stale catches a cold, and he starts crying as he remembers his mother. Pride realizes that he's been through a lot, and he even worked to study the way of life in the castle. She thinks about how cruel her character was to Stale, so she starts crying. Stale asks her what's wrong, and Pride hugs onto him as she apologizes for not being able to help him because she wants him to be with his mother. She promises not to hurt him, wanting to make everyone smile, and she tells Stale to kill her if she becomes a deplorable queen. Pride ends up sleeping in his room as Stale thinks about protecting her. We see a scene in the game where Stale tried to kill Pride after he was forced to kill his mother. Pride calls him a fool, saying he can't kill her because he signed the contract of fealty. Stale asks her what his mother did to deserve this, but Pride says she did nothing and she only wanted to see him kill his own mother for fun. Stale wants to die, but Pride gives him an order, telling him he can't take his own life. He falls to his knees as Pride laughs at him, and he becomes determined to have his revenge. Back in their world, Stale wakes up, saying he had a dream, but he can't remember what it was. As he prepares for his next lecture, he realizes that he brought Pride's handkerchief with him. He remembers the moment he shared with her, and he recalls when his mother received the official notice. His mother cried after receiving it, saying she doesn't need the money, as she begged them not to take Stale. Before they parted ways, his mother displayed an expression which is similar to what he saw from Pride. Stale reveals that he heard about Pride's naive attitude, so he thought about manipulating her, knowing she would become queen. With this plan in mind, he did everything he could to become the ideal assistant and an exemplary regent, thinking he can change the country's rules if he came into her favor. But he remembers how Pride told him to kill her if she becomes a deplorable queen, wondering what she's so afraid of. At that moment, Pride goes to him, telling him to go with her because she wants to give him something. She takes Stale to Albert, who tells him he made an exception for him as he gives Stale an envelope. He opens it, and it is revealed to be a letter from his mother, who is happy that she can now exchange letters with him, wishing him well. Stale bursts into tears as Albert tells him that this was done at Pride's request. He goes on to reveal that his mother will receive a fixed amount every month, and they will accept one letter from his mother each month, but he can only send one letter each year. Pride hugs him, telling him they all love him, and he thinks about why Pride is so afraid of becoming a deplorable queen, since she is such a good person. He becomes determined to protect her with his life, wanting to repay her kindness. Later, as Stale thinks about what he should write in his letter, he overhears people talking about Pride's selfishness, so he looks out the window, but he can't see or hear them well. He uses his teleportation ability, hiding behind the bush, as he continues to eavesdrop. Stale sees Chancellor Gilbert with a group of men, and they start talking about him, saying he is a commoner who must feel ashamed because Pride is looking down on him. Stale knows this is a lie, and Gilbert appears to be spreading this to make them question Pride's eligibility to succeed the throne, so he returns to his room, planning to report him, but he thinks that they won't believe him as he is now. He knows that he will need more than just courage, thinking he needs to be craftier than anyone else, to win even more trust than Gilbert has. He works on getting better, wanting to have an outer appearance that will be liked by the entire nation, so that he will be able to protect Pride from the filthy adults. Stale is now loyal to her, and he will not allow anyone but Pride to become queen. Meanwhile, Rosa tells Tiara that she will meet Pride and Stale at her birthday celebration tomorrow, and she becomes nervous because she doesn't know if they will like her. The next day, the nobles gather for Tiara's birthday celebration, clapping their hands as Pride and Stale make their entrance. Stale introduces himself to Rosa, saying it's an honor to be a part of their family, as he promises to assist Pride as the next regent, gaining the admiration of the nobles. Albert and Tiara also make their entrance, and Pride remembers how Tiara is supposed to join her love interests to take her character out, serving as the only light for the country during her character's rule. The nobles think she looks just like Rosa, and at that moment, Pride starts to feel jealous because the nobles never said that about her. She agrees with them, finding Tiara cute, but despite feeling jealous, she is determined not to torment her. Albert introduces Tiara to her siblings, and Pride looks forward to getting to know her. Tiara is pleased to meet her, calling her big sister, and Pride finds her endearing, which is expected from the likable protagonist of the game. Stale also introduces himself, saying it's an honor to become her older brother, but Pride notices that he isn't addressing her as the princess. He wants to work with her to support Pride, and Tiara agrees to this. The nobles are happy to see this, as Pride realizes that Stale made his move to let the entire country know that she is the future queen. The siblings join hands, and Pride declares that they will protect the country and its people, making the nobles cheer for her as they clap their hands. Rosa tells Pride not to forget this moment, saying they have high expectations from her. Rosa informs everyone that Pride's precognition ability has blossomed, so she recognizes her as the next in line to the throne. After that, Gilbert goes to them, telling them they stole everyone's hearts. He compliments Tiara's appearance, saying it's a shame she didn't gain the precognition ability, because she could have been the future queen instead, but Stale interrupts him, asking him what he means. Gilbert admits he was being rude, saying Stale has changed, since he now looks like he's from the royal family. He wants to talk to Stale about his commoner background, but Stale tells him that he was able to come this far because of Pride, and he wants to continue serving her with Tiara, as he displays a passive-aggressive behavior. Gilbert asks Pride what she thinks about the politics of that country, asking her about the other people with the same ability, but Albert suddenly hits his head and drags him away. Pride thinks that Stale resembles Gilbert, which is a shock to him, and he falls into despair because he doesn't like Gilbert. Rosa and Albert talk about Pride, thinking she's changed a lot after she awakened her abilities. Rosa reveals that she had bad premonitions about Pride, but she can no longer see them happening because of the changes to her. Rosa notes that only a month has passed since Stale joined the family, but she can't believe he is willing to go so far for Pride. The commander named Roderick approaches Pride, telling her he was deeply moved by her words, as he congratulates her for being recognized as the next in line to the throne. He wants her to meet his son in the future, and Pride looks forward to meeting him. Rosa says that the future has somehow changed, but Albert tells her not to worry, because Pride will make a great queen. After the event, we see Pride outside, staring at the sky, as she swears that in 10 years, she will do everything in her power to serve the country and its people. We see Stale training in the garden, but he gets embarrassed when he hears he will be marrying Pride. We learn it's common for adopted siblings to get married, but Stale ends up losing focus. The girls rush over to him, and Tiara treats his wounds. We learn that in the game, Stale actually develops feelings for her, so Pride wonders if that will also happen. She thinks about how her world has already changed so much, but she decides to test something to make sure. She fights against the instructor, and she manages to easily defeat him. We learn this is the first time she has ever picked up a sword, able to master self-defense by just watching, and she realizes she has the cheat abilities that make her the final boss. Stale can't believe she is so strong, thinking he won't be needed. But Pride tells him not to be discouraged, saying she is sure that he will one day become stronger than her. Stale gets back to his training, but after this test, Pride thinks her destiny is still to progress through the story of the game, but hopes to be able to spend her days with Stale and Tiara. Pride goes to observe the Royal Knights. She is greeted by the Vice Captain Clark, but Pride wonders why the captain isn't around. She is told that the captain was called away for a joint military exercise with the neighboring country. Stale thinks it's rude for the captain not to be around for Pride's first observation, but Pride is very understanding, saying she is sure that the knights will be outstanding even when the captain is away. Pride watches over the knights as they train, and she is thoroughly impressed by their skills, but she thinks about how her character used them all to do her bidding in the game. At that moment, a knight comes rushing over, informing Clark that the captain's group was attacked on their way to the neighboring country. Clark thinks they need to get Pride to safety first, but she insists on overseeing the operation. They head to the conference room, where we see the Captain Roderick reporting the situation. Stale notes that they are able to communicate, thanks to the ability of one of the knights. We see that Roderick is surrounded, but he notes there haven't been any casualties yet. Clark tells him they have sent reinforcements, but they are still 30 minutes away. Roderick isn't sure they can hold up that long, because they are already running low on ammunition. However, Pride has a plan, She reveals that Stale can teleport anything around his body weight, as long as he has the coordinates, so she tells them to prepare supplies they can send. We see Stale sending over the supplies, and Roderick's men manage to regain their morale. The captain can't believe Stale kept such an ability hidden this whole time, and one of the knights suggests he could drop bombs on their enemies, but Roderick immediately reprimands him, calling him disrespectful. Stale says he doesn't mind if Pride told him to do it, but she tells him to never do something like that. Clark apologizes for his man, and Pride reminds them to keep Stale's ability a secret, not wanting Stale to be used for war, but for him to use his ability for himself, and to protect the things that he wants. A soldier reports that the reinforcements are 10 minutes away. Clark orders for half of them to help Roderick, while the other half apprehends the enemy on the cliff top. Roderick warns them to watch their footing, because the ground in the area is unstable. However, this makes Pride remember something from the game, as she suddenly warns them not to go up to the cliff top, saying she got a premonition that it would crumble. She uses her authority as the crown princess, ordering them all to retreat. The men rush off to send word, but we learn that Roderick is actually stuck near the cliff, because his leg got caught by a falling boulder. He tries to cut off his own leg, but he fails, because he actually has a slash nullification ability, which makes him immune to taking damage from swords. Roderick thinks it's the end for him, but his son suddenly appears, saying he's a terrible father, and telling him to survive for his mother's sake. Roderick gets surrounded by the enemy, and he prepares to go down with a fight. Pride thinks there's nothing she can do, but she notices a certain man among the enemies. The men rush at him, and he fights them off, but they realize that guns work on him, so they start shooting at him. His son falls to his knees, begging someone to save him, but Pride tells him not to worry, saying she will protect everyone in her country. She tells Stale to teleport her to the battlefield, but he thinks it's too dangerous. She tells him to believe in her, saying she'll be okay, and he teleports her away. The enemy is about to finish Roderick off, but they suddenly get shot at, as Pride makes her entrance. She jumps down the cliff, telling them to prepare themselves, but Roderick tells her to get away. Pride claims he is one of her citizens, saying it's her duty to protect him, as she rushes at the enemy. She starts taking them out, and Roderick can't believe she is really just an 11-year-old girl. 3 men charge at her, but she jumps over their attack, taking them all out. The men try to retreat, but she gets hold of a gun, shooting them up, and they think she's some kind of monster. The cliff starts to crumble, but Pride catches the man she saw earlier. She tells Roderick to grab onto the man, saying they'll all die if he doesn't use his ability. The cliff is about to crush them. We see a scene from the game, where Roderick's son watches on as his father is killed. Clark orders the knights to look for survivors, as he mourns Roderick's death, but Pride mocks the fallen captain, saying his death was pathetic. Clark tells her that Roderick sacrificed his life to help the others escape, but Pride thinks it doesn't matter, because they still died in the end. She isn't bothered by the casualties, saying she can always recruit new knights, and she appoints Clark as the new captain. Roderick's son knows that Pride has foreseen the tragedy, but she just allowed everyone to die, so he becomes angry, thinking about getting revenge for his father. He knows that he won't be able to do anything as he is now, so he thinks about becoming a knight just like his father, and he cuts his hair, determined to bring Pride to justice. Back in their world, the cliff falls on Pride and Roderick, and everyone starts to fear the worst, but a strange rock formation catches their attention. The formation crumbles as the other knights arrive, and they both make it out alive. The knights are overjoyed to see that their captain has survived, as Pride orders them to put their enemy in custody before attending to Roderick's injuries. The knights wonder who she is, so Roderick informs them that she is the princess, and everyone is shocked to hear this. In the conference room, they receive a report stating that there are 0 casualties, and this makes everyone happy, but Stale realizes that he just sent Pride to the battlefield, unable to do anything to protect her. Roderick wants Pride to return to the castle immediately, informing her that the vanguard has arrived to escort her back. Roderick tells her that there are plenty of things he would like to discuss with her, so he wants her to schedule a meeting. They return to the castle, and Pride has a meeting with the knights. She tells the knights to speak their minds, as she thanks them for keeping her involvement a secret. Roderick wonders how she found out that their enemy is a special ability user, and she claims that it's because of her precognition ability, but it was really because of her game knowledge. Roderick asks her why she joined the fight alone, saying she should have alerted the other knights before making a move. Pride explains that they wouldn't make it in time, and she tells them that because of the limitations of Stale's ability, she was the only one who could rush to the scene. Roderick becomes upset, saying she shouldn't have entered the battlefield even if no one could have saved him. He tells her that she should have just informed the knights and left everything to them, but she tells him about what could have happened if she hadn't interfered. Roderick interrupts her, reminding her that they are knights, so they will gladly give their lives for the country. He tells Pride that her actions almost disgraced the way of the knights, and she could have brought despair upon all of their countrymen if she died. She realizes that he has a good point, knowing he was seeking an honorable death, but she thinks about Roderick's son, knowing he would have been sad if his father died. Roderick goes on to lecture her about the value of her life, saying she is far more valuable than they are, so she shouldn't risk her life for them. Pride demands silence, admitting that he speaks the truth, because her actions caused some trouble, but she tells Roderick that he wasn't the only one he rescued, saying she also saved the knights who will soon be under his leadership. She states that those knights will save more people in the future, because it's their duty to protect the people directly. She lectures the knights about the value of their lives, saying many people will die if there is no knight to protect them, so she implores them to forget about dying an honorable death, and think about saving their countrymen instead. Pride tells Roderick that he doesn't understand the value of his life, telling him about the people around him who devote their hearts to him, so even if he was just a mere soldier, she would have done the same thing. Pride wants to save people whenever she can, as she reminds them about her position as the first princess, telling them that she lives for the sake of the people, so she will not allow any needless death. However, Pride knows that her actions have caused the knights some trouble, so she sincerely apologizes for this. Clark speaks up, saying he doesn't approve of the royal family getting involved in the incident, but he thanks her for saving the knights, and he bows before her as he thanks her for saving Roderick, knowing he would have died without her help. The other knights join Clark, thanking Pride for saving their captain, and Roderick's son walks closer, thanking her for saving his father. The boy reveals that he is a special ability user, but he thinks his ability doesn't do much, so he gave up on becoming a knight. However, when he saw his father's life on the line, he regretted not being able to do anything, so he wants to train harder, and he starts crying as he asks Pride if he can be a knight just like his father. Pride tells him that he can do it, saying he has her support, because he has the kindness to weep for his family, and the desire to get stronger. She wants him to protect everyone after he becomes a knight, and he holds onto her hands, as he promises to protect her with his life. Pride asks for his name, and he reveals that his name is Arthur Bursford. She is surprised to hear this, as she realizes that the boy is actually a love interest in the game. She remembers that Arthur is the captain of the knights, and he is the only one who has the sword skills to overpower her character. Pride tells Arthur that she has foreseen his future, saying he is sure to become an honorable knight, but she remembers how evil her character is, so she orders him to kill her if she becomes an enemy of the country. Roderick suddenly prostrates himself, bursting into tears as he thanks Pride for saving his life. He admits that he is overjoyed to see everyone again, and he is happy to hear his son declare that he wants to become a knight, saying he is glad to be alive. Pride is also happy that he survived, but Arthur thinks about what she just said, wondering why she said that. He wants to protect her even if the whole world becomes her enemy, determined to make sure that she doesn't go down the wrong path. Arthur intends to cut down the people who stand in her way, and even if she starts to fall apart, he will do everything in his power to save her. We see that when Arthur was a child, he wanted to become a knight just like his father, but when he discovered his ability, which he uses to tend to his crops, and his parents are excited to learn he is also an ability user, he is pitied by other people, because his ability was no good for being a knight. No matter how hard he tried to train his ability, it never changed, so he started thinking about being a farmer instead. But after meeting Pride, he has become determined to become a knight. He resumes his training with his father, and he asks to learn more about Pride. He goes in for the kill, but he ends up getting pushed away. However, Roderick is impressed by his technique, thinking he is even more talented than himself. His wife arrives, wondering what they are doing, and she is surprised to learn Arthur is trying to become a knight, but Roderick quickly runs off, saying he has business to attend to, leaving his sword behind. Pride wonders how Arthur is doing, and we see that in the game, Roderick died at the cliff, causing Arthur to curse Pride for throwing his father's life away so easily, and swearing to get revenge on her. But she's glad she was able to encourage him to become a knight. Pride visits the knights, telling Clark she has something to return to the captain. When the other knights hear that Pride is visiting, they all rush over to her, and she has become quite popular with them after the last mission. Roderick comes rushing over, and Pride notices he seems to have hurt his head. Clark points out they were drinking all night, and after training with Arthur in the morning, Roderick ended up having an accident. Pride is glad to hear Arthur already started his training, and Roderick tells her Arthur was asking about her. But at that moment, Arthur arrives, bringing Roderick his sword, and he gets embarrassed when he sees Pride. All the knights smile at him, but he prepares to leave. Clark knows he has something he wants to say to Pride, but Arthur says he will tell her after he becomes a knight. Before he can go, Stale invites him to join in on his training, saying he's in need of a training partner, and Arthur agrees. Stale shows him to their training room, but as Stale talks to him, he finds his smile suspicious, wondering what he is planning. Stale says there's no need to be formal with him, telling him to just think of him as a friend. They start their training, and Stale is surprised by Arthur's skill, wondering if he really took a break from his training, but Arthur claims he hasn't touched a sword in years. Stale tells him he should try out for the knights, which is a surprise for Arthur because he thinks he is just a beginner. He thinks it would take him at least 3 years to prepare, but Stale thinks he is ready, and he offers to support him in any way. Arthur wonders why he is trying so hard to make him a knight, and Stale says it's so that he can protect Pride. Even though Pride is strong, he worries she will continue to be reckless in the future. He is training for the purpose of protecting her, but he knows he isn't enough. He recognizes how strong Arthur will become, so he wants him to be the one to protect her. Arthur finds it strange, thinking he is just a noob, but as he thinks of Pride, he wants to be able to protect her. He wonders why Stale is trying so hard for Pride's sake, and Stale thinks they are similar, saying he owes everything to her, so he made a vow to live for her sake. He finds it hard to trust the people around them, but after seeing Arthur swear to protect her with his life, he started to believe in him. He wants to become Pride's shield, and he tells Arthur to become her sword. Arthur accepts his explanation, agreeing to work together for Pride's sake. They start to get along, and Arthur tells him his smile creeped him out. Stale is surprised hearing this, and Arthur says it was the reason he found him suspicious. They start messing around, and Stale is glad to have met him. We see Pride reading about the laws of the country, as she recalls that her character used it to commit atrocities, so she wants to make sure that she doesn't go down the same path. Pride appears at the throne room, where Gilbert tells her that the man she captured is involved in the disappearance of knights from an allied kingdom. He reveals that the man set up an ambush after extracting information from the knights held in captivity. Rosa knows that Pride has been reading about the laws of the country, so she wants her to pass judgment as the future queen. The criminal enters the room, and Pride remembers that his name is Val, knowing that her character hired him to fight Tiara in the game. We learn that the knights held in captivity are still alive, so they're going to need Val's guidance to find them, and Rosa wants Pride to mention what she is considering as she delivers judgment. Pride says that Val has committed a serious crime, and she thinks that he deserves to be executed, but she knows that they're going to need him to find the captive knights, so she considers applying a fealty contract. She orders the knights to remove his gag as she approaches him, asking him how he would like to be punished, as she explains that he will be deprived of his free will after he enters the fealty contract, so he could end up suffering a fate worse than death. But Val tells her that he doesn't want to die, so she ultimately decides to release him after he serves the contract. Rosa tells Pride to carry out the contract, and she signs it, but she worries she's going down the same path as the game and starting to become evil. Val also signs the contract, allowing it to take effect, as Pride gives him his orders, forcing him to serve the royal family and live an honest life free from violence. After some time, Stale reveals that the knights have been rescued, so Pride approaches Val, telling him to speak his mind. He calls her a monster, making Stale upset, but she decides to release him anyways, saying she will leave him with 2 orders to live by. The first order is to protect Tiara in case of emergency, and everyone is surprised to hear this, but Pride says that it's a matter of the highest priority, so Val can disobey her for Tiara's sake. The second order is to return to her in case he needs help, and she sets him free, ordering him to leave the castle. His legs start moving against his will, and as he starts walking, he asks her why she's doing this. Pride tells him that it might just be based on an unfounded fear, and the guards escort him away. Stale thinks she's being too lenient, saying Val deserves a harsh punishment, but Pride sees him as one of her subjects, so she gave him another chance, knowing he wants to live. Tiara wonders if she's being a hindrance because Pride asked Val to protect her, thinking she must be weak, but Pride tells her that she loves her, saying she just wants to protect what's important to her. She reveals that she also loves Stale, telling him that she wants to be his older sister until the very end. We learn that Pride is happy to be with them, and she wants them to remember that she loves them, even if something bad happens in the future. It's almost time for the knighthood exam, and they meet up with Arthur, as Pride reveals that they will be watching him train every day, thinking it will encourage him to train harder. Stale and Arthur have a sparring match, and after a few days, we see the boys continuing their training, while the sisters pick flowers. The sisters give the boys flowers, as Tiara reveals that Pride chose the flowers for them. She reveals that the flowers have meaning, explaining that Stale's flowers express intelligence, success, and worthiness, while Arthur's flowers represent heroism, strength, and beauty. She puts flowers on their heads, saying it looks good on them, but it becomes time for the knighthood exam, so Arthur bids them farewell and makes his way outside. After 2 years, we see Arthur walking to the throne, and he kneels before Pride, who tells him that he is now a knight. After the ceremony, Stale asks Arthur about Gilbert, who seemed to be pestering him during the event, but he reveals that they were just talking about an uncommon special ability. Arthur gives Stale a box, which contains glasses, and he tries it on, as the sisters tell him that he looks great. Gilbert pesters Pride about his proposal, when Albert suddenly stops him and takes him away. She reveals that he was proposing a special ability registration law, where the people will be required to report their ability, but she doesn't like it, because she thinks that it violates human rights. Stale tells her to be careful around Gilbert, and she laughs, as she recalls that the two of them were able to get along in the game. But this makes Pride confused, because she thought that Gilbert wasn't a character in the game. We learn that Stale can now teleport more than just his weight, and she orders him to take them to Gilbert's location. Stale teleports them to the entrance of a room, where they hear Gilbert arguing with Albert, because his wishes have not been granted. He reveals that he isn't happy, because they quickly deal with the matters that involve Pride, but even after 7 years, they still haven't given him what was promised. Albert tells him that he understands his struggles, but Gilbert becomes upset, saying Albert will never understand what he's going through, because his fiancée Maria is dying, so he needs someone with the special ability to cure her illness. We see a scene from the game, where Gilbert asks Pride what she has done to him. She tells him that he is stuck as an old man, because he told her to enact a law, which gives her absolute control over the rare special abilities in the world. We learn that he did it because he thought that the law would help save Maria, but he starts crying, knowing that it's all his fault. We return to the present, and Pride finally remembers who he is. Gilbert is revealed to be a secret character in the game, but Pride didn't recognize him, because his appearance is different. We learn that his fiancée has an incurable disease, so he asked for her character's help, and she promised to enact a law in exchange for 5 years of labor. But the day after the law was enacted, Maria died, and her character forced the special ability users into subordination or death. Feeling guilty for what happened, Gilbert could no longer look like a young adult, and he was only able to switch between an old man and a boy. Pride thinks that Maria will die after a few weeks, because the law was passed on that day, and it takes weeks for a law to be enacted. They see Albert ordering the guards to search the castle, so Pride approaches him, asking him about the commotion. He reveals that Gilbert is missing, and they go to a room, where Stale explains Gilbert's situation to Tiara, while Pride remembers that her character decides on execution in war, without listening to the opinion of others. This makes her realize that her character could have enacted the law immediately after it was passed, which means this could be the day that Maria dies, so she and Stale quickly dress up. We see Gilbert with a group of thugs, promising to pay them if they can find someone who can cure illness, but the men laugh, thinking the ability doesn't exist. He is about to walk away, but the thugs attack him, so he fights back, knocking them down. However, one of them grabs onto him, and he is about to get stabbed, when Stale and Pride suddenly arrive, helping him deal with the thugs. Pride tells Gilbert that she had a premonition, saying Maria is about to die. In a flashback, we learn that Gilbert was born as a commoner, and after his parents died, He had to resort to underhanded methods just to make ends meet. He meets Maria as she escapes her room, and we learn that her health is declining, so she was confined to her room. She tells him that he is the first person she has ever met, asking him to take her to a place where she can see more people. Gilbert grants her wish, allowing them to view the city from a distance. Maria tells him that it's the most beautiful thing she has ever seen, and he offers to take her there whenever she wants. She accepts his offer, and since then, he started to change his life, landing a decent job, because she has given him a reason to live. One evening, Maria reveals that she has a fiancé, so he starts crying, but she tells him that she loves him, and she kisses him. She wants him to keep seeing her until she turns 16, because that's when she's going to get married. Gilbert awakens his ability Eternal Youth, which allows him to manipulate his own lifespan, and he tells Maria that he won't be seeing her for a while, but he promises to return to her. He focuses on his studies, and he is appointed as Albert's advisor, making him the nation's chancellor. Gilbert returns to Maria, asking her to marry him, and she hugs him as she accepts his proposal. He is finally enjoying his life at the palace, but one day, Maria collapses due to her illness. She tells him to live a good life if she dies, but he promises to cure her, saying he will do whatever it takes. Back in the present, Stale threatens Gilbert, knowing he has committed crimes to save Maria, but Pride stops him, saying Gilbert is still her subject. Pride and Stale return to the palace, where Gilbert calls out to Pride, imploring her to help him. They decide to join him, as Pride orders Stale to teleport her to Arthur, and go with Gilbert to Maria's room. Pride approaches Arthur, and she tells him that she wants to save someone, but she is certain that his life will change if he decides to help her. Arthur tells her that it's okay, because she has already changed his life, saying he is willing to die for her. Stale joins them, as Pride wonders why he looks like a grown man, but he tells her that there's no time to explain, and he takes them to Maria, who is about to die. Pride orders Arthur to lay his hands on Maria, revealing that he has the ability to heal all of creation. Upon laying his hands on her, a bright light appears, and her condition instantly improves. She thanks Arthur for saving her, as Pride notes that he wasn't supposed to know about his ability yet, knowing she has changed the story again. She thanks Stale for helping her, wondering why his body has changed, so he reveals that Gilbert transformed him into a grown man to help him move faster. Gilbert bows to her as he expresses his gratitude, and he admits that he has committed unforgivable acts in his quest to save Maria, saying he is ready to take any punishment that she has for him. Pride says that she can't excuse this, but she just tells him to inform her parents about his crimes, ordering the maids to forget everything they witnessed. She orders him to make an oath that he will work for the people and continue serving as the chancellor of the country until he dies. He starts crying, as Pride recalls that Gilbert promised Tiara that he will protect the people at the end of the game. Gilbert makes the oath, and he pledges allegiance to her, saying he will never forget the kindness that she displayed. That evening, Arthur reveals that the knights now know about his abilities, and Stale wonders if he still wants to be a knight, because his ability has opened more lucrative opportunities for him, but he tells Stale that he wants to keep his position. They start talking about Pride, thinking she is unfair because she let him off so easily. Stale admits that he's upset, because he really hates Gilbert, saying he doesn't deserve his position. Stale starts to think that he wasn't able to protect Pride, seeing Gilbert as a threat, and he starts crying, but Arthur tells him that he's doing a good job. Arthur reveals that he used to hear plenty of bad rumors about Pride, but they all disappeared when Stale started supporting her. He knows that Stale won't be able to protect her from everything, so he offers to help accomplish this task. He mentions how Stale is more mature than him despite being at a younger age, revealing that he used to cry a lot. Stale promises not to cry for 5 years, and Arthur says that he will do the same, because he wants to look strong in front of them. During a royal banquet, Stale reveals that he despises Gilbert, but Tiara thinks that he's just jealous. Gilbert knows that Stale doesn't like him, so he takes this as a challenge, and he formally announces that he will be marrying Maria. At the arena, the knights are fighting for the position of Imperial Guard, and Arthur wipes the floor with everyone, allowing him to earn the title. While riding the carriage, they talk about how fierce the competition was, because only Roderick and Clark didn't participate, and everyone fought to the best of their abilities. Pride thinks about giving the knights a raise, when the carriage suddenly stops, because there is a man blocking their path. She realizes that it's Val, so she rushes over to check up on him. Later that day, Val regains consciousness, and Pride tells him that he has been carried to the castle. He is about to disrespect her, but the contract of fealty stops him, making him fall to his knees. Pride wonders what happened to him, and he reveals that the contract compelled him to return to her. She recalls that she ordered him to return if he needs help, so she asks him what he needs from her. He refuses to tell her about it, but the contract forces him to speak the truth, so he tells her to help the kids, Kemet and Sefik. Val reveals that they were taken by human traffickers, and Pride recalls that he can't use violence, so he can't save the kids. She places him under house arrest, so he calls her a monster, but she says that she will help him because human trafficking is illegal, and it's her duty to help those in need. After some time, when they visit Val in his room, where they realize that he has made a mess, Pride gives him his meal, but he takes the knife, instantly throwing it toward Pride, which makes everyone panic, but we see he was just aiming at a spider. Pride orders him to go to bed after the meal, saying he needs to be in good condition to save the kids, but he says that he doesn't need their help, claiming the kids aren't important to him. Tiara wonders why he wants to save the kids, and he claims that they help him live a comfortable life, so Pride speculates that he is using the kids to do his bidding. Val tells them to leave him alone, and Pride hugs Tiara, knowing she is afraid. Pride knows that Tiara is sensitive to people's sorrows, thinking there must be a reason why she talked to Val. Pride tells the others to look after Tiara, while she stays in the room for a bit longer, saying she will be fine because she is Val's master. Pride tells Val they will save the kids in the morning, but he insists that he doesn't need help. She asks him about the kids, so he reveals that they've been following him around wherever he goes, because they think that he will keep them safe. She asks him what they were like, and he reveals that they are both special ability users. Val reveals that Kemet has no purpose of his own, so he keeps following other people, and Sefik is always looking after him. Even though they aren't related by blood, she acts like his big sister. Val knows that she has the ability to blast people away with water, but he doesn't know what kind of ability Kemet has. He says that it was Sefik's idea to follow him, and that he taught the kids about money, but he starts pounding the wall, saying he's starting to feel sick again. Pride asks him about what's precious to him, and he claims that he just values money in his life, but Pride digs deeper, wondering if he has anyone precious in his life. Val claims that he doesn't care about anyone, but she asks him how he would feel if Kemet and Sefik died. Val becomes upset, feeling pain in his heart, but he wonders why his thoughts are causing him to feel this way, and he starts punching the floor, saying he can't stop thinking about the kids. He blames Pride for everything, saying she should have just killed him so that he wouldn't experience this pain. Val bursts into tears, and he is confused about what's happening, so Pride concludes that he doesn't understand his emotions. She hugs him, ordering him not to push her away, as she explains that his suffering is a part of his punishment. She teaches him about his emotions, saying he feels sick because he is worried about the kids, and he is crying because they are like a family to him. Val meets up with the human traffickers, but they refuse to release Kemet and Sefik because they want 5 kids in exchange, but he's only brought 4. He says that he's the 5th one, but they think he isn't worth it, so he shows them his ability, making them change their minds. Val tells them to release Kemet and Sefik, but they restrain him instead, saying they will never let go of their merchandise. Val and the kids are thrown inside a carriage, and we learn that the 4 kids are actually Pride and the others. It is revealed that before they met up with the human traffickers, they came up with a plan to infiltrate the enemy base so that the knights can eliminate the human traffickers after they rescue the prisoners. Arthur worries that their plan won't work because the public knows who they are, so Gilbert transforms them into kids, and they assume different identities. They arrive at the enemy base, and Stale removes his restraints. The enemies wonder why Stale is free, so they grab onto him, but they are instantly sent to a prison, where the knights start interrogating them, wanting to know about the location of their base. Stale rescues the other kids in the carriage, and we learn that the enemies have separated the special ability users from the ordinary kids. Arthur, Gilbert and Pride join the ordinary kids in a cell, where they hear a girl calling out to Val. Pride realizes they must be Kemet and Sefik, so they approach them, saying they are Val's friends, but she doesn't believe them, saying Val doesn't have friends. Sefik thinks that Val got caught, calling him an idiot, because she knows that the human traffickers would never release their merchandise. She inquires about his location, so Gilbert reveals that Val went to the prison of special ability users to look for her, but the guard is bothered by the noise, telling them to shut up. Meanwhile, Val and Stale rescue the special ability users, but Stale wonders why they haven't found Kemet and Cephik. Val thinks that they must be hiding their abilities. Stale notices flashes from a distance, and Val thinks that it must be from a special cell. At that moment, a guard spots them, but Stale quickly teleports him away, saying the knights should be arriving soon. Val detonates a bomb, grabbing the attention of the other guards, and he uses his ability to trap them. Arthur thinks that the special ability users have been rescued, but Cephik is worried about Val, so she uses her ability, blasting the guard away. Stale enters the special cell, where he sees a boy lying on the ground. He removes the restraints as the boy wakes up, introducing himself as Powell. Stale tells him that he can now go home, preparing to teleport him away, when lightning suddenly comes out of his body, as he reveals that he doesn't want to go home, because he brings misery to everyone around him. Stale realizes that Powell's ability is out of control, but he walks forward, saying he is also a special ability user. He tells Powell about Pride, saying the country will change after she becomes queen, and he promises to help him find a place to belong. The lightning continues to injure him, but he is able to hold Powell, who disables his lightning, asking Stale why he's doing this. He explains that he understands what he is going through, and Powell starts crying as he is teleported away. Stale thinks about returning to Pride, but he collapses because of his injuries. Meanwhile, the knights arrive at the location as a knight named Alan notices Arthur, asking him what he's doing there. He hides Pride from the knights, ordering them to back him up while he charges at the enemy. Arthur runs away with her, but Alan catches up to him and he recognizes Pride, but Arthur claims that he is mistaken. The human traffickers catch Val and Stale, preparing to interrogate them, but Gilbert suddenly arrives, telling them that the knights have arrived, frightening the enemy leader. Gilbert proceeds to taunt him, but the boss shoots him in the arm. Seeing this, Arthur charges at them, targeting the leader, while Alan orders the knights to attack. Arthur slices through the enemies, but the leader has taken Val hostage, threatening to kill him, so Arthur stops fighting, and he ends up getting restrained. Gilbert returns Pride to her original form, and she sets Arthur free, slicing the chains with her sword. The leader tries to attack her, but she shatters the chains, causing him to panic. He tries to shoot her, but she easily slices through the bullets. She doesn't want to dirty her hands by killing him, so she throws her sword away, giving it to Alan, who delivers the finishing blow. It looks like it's finally over, but they suddenly hear a loud explosion as an airship starts bombing the area. They start running for the exit, but they receive a report that Kemet and Cephik are still inside. Val finds Cephik, but she tells him that Kemet is trapped, so he tries to save him using his ability, but he's not strong enough. The cave is about to collapse, but he still tries to save Kemet, and Alan orders 2 knights to help him, while the others evacuate the cave. They carry the kids away, leaving Pride and Arthur to help rescue Kemet. Val sees Kemet through an opening, but the cave is on the verge of collapsing, so the knights try to convince Val to leave, but he refuses, reminding them that he's a criminal, so they don't need to care about him. He tells Pride not to give him any orders, but she tells him to block them off, and he is grateful to her for this. Pride and Arthur leave the cave, and Cephik approaches them, asking them about Val and Kemet, but Arthur tells her they are still inside. Cephik is about to go back, but the knights stop her, so she uses her ability, launching water at them. Seeing this, Gilbert comes up with a theory, and Pride returns to Val, ordering him to remove the wall. Val wonders why she's back, but Pride tells him to grab Kemet's hand. He wonders what they're planning, knowing that he can't pull Kemet out of that hole, but after Kemet grabs his hand, Pride orders him to control the entire cave. Val thinks that he can't do it, but he suddenly feels an overwhelming power as the cave instantly transforms. He wonders how he did it, as the rubble disappears, allowing him to reunite with Kemet. We return to Gilbert, who thinks that Kemet's special ability could be to amplify the power of a user, because he remembers how strong Cephik was when she defeated the guards, but her ability was so much weaker after being separated from Kemet. Val finds this unbelievable, and he starts controlling the cave with his hand. He creates a platform, which starts moving on its own, and they make it out of the cave. Cephik is overjoyed to see Kemet, but we see a man watching them from the airship, which is revealed to be invisible. The man drops bombs from the ship, covering the area with explosions. Cephik is about to fall down a cliff, but she is saved by Val and he falls down instead. He starts to wonder what has become of him because he never imagined that he would risk his life for a kid. In a flashback, we learn that Val's mother abandoned him when he was 7 years old. The people treated him harshly, so he learned to fight back and even killed people to survive. He joined a criminal group to make profit, but pride captured him and she made him sign the fealty contract before setting him free. Val returns to his town, where he sees Kemet and Sefik, who are being attacked by the other kids, but they all run away after seeing him. Val ignores the duo, but they start following him anywhere he goes, thinking he will keep them safe. He tries to run away, as he remembers that he was involved in human trafficking, but the kids are still following him, so he tries to use force, but he can't, because the contract forbids him from using violence. Val knows that he can't do anything, so he decides to ignore them, but after a few months, he gets used to having them around, and he even starts to teach them. Sefik starts a business by selling water, and their relationship deepens as they start looking after each other. But one day, the human traffickers capture the kids, and the leader assaults Val, ordering him to bring 5 kids in exchange for Kemet and Sefik. He tries to retaliate, as the contract of fealty stops him, but he remembers he can return to Pride for help. Back in the present, Val accepts his fate, happy that he was able to save the kids in the end, but Pride catches up to him, ordering him to grab her hand. She calls out to Stale, who immediately regains consciousness and teleports to their location, bringing them back to safety. Kemet and Sefik are crying, thinking Val has fallen to his death, but he appears behind them, and they are overjoyed to see he survived. The next day, Arthur warns Pride to be careful, because they still haven't caught the person responsible for the bombing. Val arrives with the kids, and he has helped Pride with a delivery. Pride is surprised that he was able to do it in one day, because it usually takes 5 days to complete the task, but Stale confirms that the letter is authentic. She thanks Val for a job well done, as she announces that he and the kids will become the royal family's exclusive carriers. Kemet and Sefik are happy to hear this, and Pride reveals they will be establishing a school in the country, promising the kids that they will be able to live better lives. She tells them that the school will be established if they decide to do their part as carriers, and Val promises to help her with this goal, accepting her as his master. Pride watches as Arthur fights Gilbert, but it looks like he doesn't stand a chance, and Gilbert tells Stale to join in, but Stale refuses because he still doesn't like him. Gilbert promises to teach them a technique if they can land a hit on him, an attack that can knock an opponent unconscious without causing harm. Stale is interested by this, so he joins the fight, telling Arthur that they will gang up on Gilbert. They proceed to attack him, but he dodges their attacks, and easily takes them down. Val arrives, wondering what's happening, and Tiara offers the kids cake. Sefik is interested, asking Val and Kemet to join her, so Val goes to take Kemet's hand, but he ends up grabbing onto Pride, making Stale and Arthur jealous. Val realizes the mistake, so he quickly walks away with Kemet, as Gilbert notes that his opponents are distracted. Before leaving, Tiara tells Pride to cheer for the boys, thinking they will be encouraged if she tells them how she feels. As the fight drags on, she notices that the boys are getting beat up, so she tells them to stand up. She says that Stale is smart and cool, and she is proud to have him as his brother, while Arthur is a spectacular knight, who is so strong that she thinks he can defeat anyone. She tells them to win, and Gilbert notices that they are now serious, so he concludes that Pride can bring out their inner strength. She continues to cheer them on as they charge at him, managing to land a hit. After the fight, we see that the boys are exhausted, but Arthur is determined to get stronger, saying he wants to surpass Gilbert. He recalls that he wasn't able to do much during their fight with the human traffickers, thinking he hasn't changed at all, because he wasn't as helpful as Stale. But Stale reminds him how he used his sword to protect everyone, and this helps him realize that he has done his part. Pride tells them that they fought well, and she proceeds to wipe Arthur's face, saying she was captivated by his fighting skills. She does the same for Stale. She thinks about how they have both become admirable people, and she is glad she was able to meet them. She reminds them that they must protect Tiara and the people no matter what, but they tell her that they will also protect her, and Pride is happy to hear this. Pride thinks about everything she has been through, but she knows that it's just the beginning, and that she could still end up as the final boss, so she resolves herself to continue to do everything that she can, to protect everything that's important to her. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.